So it's a beautiful one this morning. Hope you all enjoyed yesterday's trading day. Don't forget, this is brought by you by CGC Market. I remain Jefta, live from Port Harcourt branch, CGC Market. You are welcome today to our daily analysis. So without wasting much of our time, let's quickly go on to our fundamental analysis. Let's quickly go to our fundamentals analysis and see what the market has for us for today. So, like I said, it's a beautiful trading week, and we hope to see more and more, including low impact news, high impact news, and medium impact news. So by 2 a.m. this morning, we'll be able to look at the average earning index that talks about the British pounds. So this particular news is a low impact news. This has to do with the change in the price of businesses and the government pay for labor, including their bonuses. That has to do with the car allowance, health allowance, and other insurances too. So this has to do with the price changing of businesses that government has to pay for the labor. And take note, this particular information is a leading indicator for consumer inflation when businesses pay more for their labor, and the high costs are usually passed to the consumer with a very high cost. So take note, this is between the business paying more, the business owners paying more for labor. So as a result of paying more for labor, when I mean by labor, we are talking about the salaries, we are talking about the wages being paid to workers. That is what is called labor. So as they pay more for labor, it is tend that definitely the price or their goods and services will tend to rise towards the consumers. So that is what we have for 2 a.m. on the British pounds for talking about the average earning index. So 2 a.m. there were another two low impact news that talks about the count changes and the unemployment rate. Now, the reason why we have to give attention to this unemployment rate is because this particular unemployment rate is giving you the total percentage of workers that is unemployed right now, seeking employment for the past 3 months. So these are the jobless claim. It's also known as jobless claim in the sense that you are going to look at the unemployment workers that be actually looking for employment for the past 3 months. They have been jobless. So that is why this particular news at 2 a.m. is very, very said. Low impact news are not always low impact news. They move the market to some certain extent. So 5 a.m. this morning on Euro, we have about 2 medium impact news. One talking about the German government, about the economic sentiment, and the other talking about the German economic sentiment. We're talking about the New Zealand. So this particular information on Euro, like this news that came out by 5 a.m. is a leading indicator of economic health investors and the analysts, virtue of their job. Now, this is giving you an overall insight, an indication about the economic health investors. These people are known as people who are the movers and shakers of that particular economic factor. Now, If the actual is greater than the forecast on this particular news on euro, that is to say, it is good for that particular currency. So for those of us who give attention to this particular news by 5 a.m., for those of us who traded it, we have seen that the market moves to a certain extent. On that same euro, that same 5 o'clock, we were able to witness the flash employment change, the flash and the trade balance, and the 10-Y bond audition. Now, if the actual is greater than the forecast on this particular news, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. Now, 8:15 a.m. this morning, there was a news on Canadian dollar talking about the housing stats. Now, this has to do with the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So the reason why this news is, you should give attention to this particular news on Canadian dollar is because it gives us the residential buildings that began construction during the previous months. Now, this has to do with the real estate industry now. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say, it's good for Canadian dollar. Now, 8:30 this morning, we were able to look at the producer price index, PPI. The producer price index, PPI. That this particular news is a high impact news. 8:30 today, this morning, as soon as we start our daily analysis for today, there was a news on the producer's price index, which is known as the PPI. Now, this particular news, it has to do with the change in the price of finished goods and services sold by the producers. Now, as a result of that, it gives us a leading indicator that about the consumers' inflation, that when producers charge more for foods and services, the higher costs are actually passed on to the consumers. Remember, we said that this particular high impact news, talking about the producer's price index, has to do with the change of price of finished goods and services sold by the producers, which is sold by the manufacturers. Now, this is giving us a leading indication that when producers charge more for goods and services, the higher the cost for the consumers. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to tell you that it is good for the USD dollar. So that is why we need to give attention to this particular. That same 8:30, we had a medium impact news still on the producer price index. This has to do with the finishing of goods and services sold by the producers, excluding food and energy. When we are talking about food, we are talking about, when we talk about food in the Forex market, we are talking about commodities. Food in general, commodities like maize, corn, rice, sugar, cocoa, maize. Then we talk about energy, we are talking about gas. So this has to do with the producer's price index. So let's move on. So if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. Now, that same 8:30, we'll be able to look at the Empire State Manufacturing Index. Now, this has to do with the New York Manufacturing Index. So, if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. 9:30 a.m., we'll be looking at a medium impact news on the British pounds, which is talking about the leading index. If the actual is greater than the forecast, it is good for that particular currency. Then we have an alternative news on USD, talking about the montage, and 10:30 a.m. this morning, we're looking about the Australian dollar, talking about the leading index. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for the particular currency. We look at NZD, which is the New Zealand dollar. We're talking about the price index. We'll also look at 4 p.m. this evening. We'll be looking at about the US, talking about the long-term purchasers. Now, this has to do with this has to do with long-term investors, people who are willing to invest minimum of 5 years, see how they can get a little profit on their money. So by 6:30 a.m., by 6:30 p.m., we'll be looking at about the leading index. Now, if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. This particular news has to do with the change in level of the opposite index based on the 9 economic indicators. If you want to know more about the 9 economic indicators, please click on that particular news and read more about it. So by 8:30 p.m., we'll be having a low impact news that's talking about the consumer price index. Now, this particular news, why we need to give attention to this particular news is because this has to do with the change in price of goods and services purchased by the consumers. So that is why we need to give attention to this particular news. So if the result is out and the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. On that same 8:30, we'll be still looking at another news on not on the consumer's price index this time, but it's on the producer price index. And this particular news has to do with change in the price of goods purchased and sold by the producers. Remember, the previous one was new change of price and goods purchased by the consumers. Now, this particular news is based on the goods purchased and sold by the producers. So the other one, the previous, on that same 8:30, they'll be talking about the consumer price index and the producer price index. So that is why we need to give our undivided attention to this particular news. So lastly, for today, around 11:30 p.m., we'll be looking at the industry activity based on the Japanese yen. Now, the reason why we need to give an attention to this particular news is that it has to do with the change in total value of services purchased by the businesses. Which is talking about the business owners. Their value of goods or services that is being purchased by business owners. Now, this particular news will be very volatile. Like I said, low impact news are not always low impact news in the new information market. They definitely move the market to a certain extent. Now, this particular news is an indicator of a health of the economic healthy business. This has to do with the health of the business owners based on the economic news. So this particular news actually signals the future of economic activities, such as hiring workers, the earners of workers, and the investments done by the investors. So that is why we need to give an attention to this particular news, because this has to do with the virtually almost the 4 corners of the economic stability, which has to do with the hiring, which has to do with the workers, the jobless people, and they have to hire them. This has to do with people, workers earning currently, that is those who has those of the citizens who have a job right now, which are paying, and this has to do with the investors, which is talking about the investors being invested their money in the economy. So this is very, very economic news. So that is it for the fundamentals analysis. For those of us who are joining us, who are just joining us for the benefit of those, let me just give a recap of what we have out for today, what we have to see for today's fundamental analysis. So by 2 a.m. this morning, we're having three news, impact news. We witnessed, we're talking about the average earning index and the unemployment rate. By 5 o'clock a.m. this morning, we were able to witness a medium impact news and a low impact news about euro. If the actual is greater than the forecast, because of this 5 a.m. news, that the economic sentiment, German economic sentiment, flash climate change, and the trade balance. And alternatively, GBP, we have an addition bond, and 8:15 a.m. today, we are able to look at the housing starts talking about the real estate on Canadian dollar, and 8:30 a.m. this morning at the producers price index, a very high impact news today, and on USD, we got a video impact news on USD. That's 8:30 a.m. About the state manufacturing. 9:30 a.m. About at the British pound, talking about the leading index, if the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say it is good for that particular currency. Alternatively, we look at the US talking about the money, and 10:30 a.m. this morning, we look about the Australian dollar talking about the leading index, if the actual is greater than the forecast. New Zealand dollar alternative, look at the price index, USD dollar, 4 p.m. this evening. We're going to see about the long-term purchasers, the long-term investors. And 6:30 p.m. we look about the leading index on the Australian dollar. And 8:30 we'll go at the CPI, which is the price index, and the PPI, which is the price index. Please, we need to give an attention to this particular news. This particular news will be of great help for us, those of us who are trading analysis. If the actual is greater than the forecast, that is to say, it is good for that particular currency. Lastly, 11:30 p.m. on JPY, we were able to look at the industrial activity, which is based on the hiring of workers and the earners and the investments. So we're going to look at that. And this has to do with the change of the total value of services purchased by business owners. So take note of this particular. So let's quickly move on. Don't forget, this is brought by you by CJC Markets. This is brought by you by CJC Market. My name is Jefta Madi. So let's quickly move on to our technical analysis. Let's do technical analysis. Right. If you can see my screen, please type yes in the comment section. If you can see my screen, type yes in the comment section. Sure that right, all right. and we are looking out for SDJPY. SDJPY. Now, USDJPY is very, very nice there. A lot of markets. On daily time frame. Now, the first thing you need to do as a trader when doing your technical analysis, the first thing you need to do is to identify your trend. So let's look at our trend. Find our trend. Trend. So we have been able to identify our trends. So let's look. Let's map out our support and resistance zone, our supply and demand zone. Let's start from the top. Another one. And keep this here. Okay, this is another one. And let's look at this. Another one. Another one. So markets, we have been able to map out our supply and demand zone, our most necessary points. Okay. Next, let's quickly map out where there will possibly be an impulse price change or trend. Remember, this is a bullish direction. Now, in this, let me have my here there was an impulse price change. There was an impulse price change here, impulse price movement here. So we can likely mark it out as our reversal point. Remember, like I said, mapping out your zone or mapping out your range does not sometimes it's not beneficial at that particular point in time. But in the future, you get to give you an insight where possibly there will be a reversal or a rejection or a impulse price movement. So more parts. Now we are being sensitive to our trading charts. Like I said, CJC market always gives you top-notch information where you can get your technical and fundamental analysis. So we have quickly mapped out our sensitive points, our reversal points. So let's quickly analyze this market. We're already analyzing it. The market at this particular control is on a resistance zone. Here, here, and here. Now, if the market is able to break this resistance zone, like I said, if market is approaching a support zone or a resistance zone, regardless the movement, either bullish or bearish, the market will definitely slow down at that particular point in price. Because there was an impulse price there, so our market is able to slow down at this particular point in price. So if markets exceeded this point and continue its downtrend, market is heading down to this zone. If it doesn't respect this turning point, this reversal point, that is it's coming here to clear off, stops there, then bounce up here, gets. So that is what the market has for us on SDJPY. The market was able to turn at this particular point in price. The market is going to get upward, reject, bounce up, bounce down here, and continue its upward movement. Remember, this is an uptrend. The market is going to give us a lower lows and a lower, as in a higher lows and a higher highs. Look at this, the market was able to give us a new high. This it was higher than the previous high, that is a higher high. The market was able to give us a higher high. It was higher than the previous high. This the market was able to give us a low, and this was a higher low. And this the market was able to give us a new low, which is higher than the previous low. Since if this is because the market is an uptrend market. The market is an uptrend market. So the market tends to give us higher highs and higher lows. So that's it for SDJPY. You can go on your 4 hours time frame and look at the market into detail. Like I said, the higher time frame gives you an overview of the market. Meanwhile, the lower time frame gives you the market in detail. So this is what the 4 hours time frame is looking at for us. So if the market is able to break this particular resistance because of here, the market is selling down, clear off stops here, and continue its upward. But if the market does not break this particular resistance here, the market does not break here, the market here will serve as a support to the buyers that will give us a new high. So that is what the market is looking out for us. Remember, if market is from a resistance zone or a support zone, kindly do nothing as a smart trader. As a smart trader, you tend to do nothing. So that is it. Okay. Hope you can hear me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, please type yes to the comment section. News is already playing out on SDJPY. Like I said, low impact news are not always low impact news. Low impact news are not always low impact news. Is already playing out on this particular pair, USDJPY. As the market is buying massively on the 4 hours time frame. Let's look at the 1 hour time frame and see what the market is doing. Look at what the market is doing. It's a very long candle. It's already giving us how many pips? 317 pips already. The market has got. So let's quickly move to gold. Let's quickly move to gold and see what gold has for us today. Right, let me change it to gold. All right, gold is currently on a resistance zone. Like I said, gold is generally on the sell trade, trying to break out. At this particular point, you can see gold is on a stable market. So we currently map out our support and resistance zone, which is our supply and demand zone on the daily time frame right now. So gold is on a resistance zone. Okay, this is another resistance zone. Another resistance zone. And this is another resistance zone. Now, gold it is So clear, let's be sensitive to our trading charts now and let's map out our reversal point where there was an impulse price movement. There was an impulse price movement at this particular point. I want to draw map out our zone, but we'll be more sensitive. We are going to start the range from where a candle previously that created that impulse price change. We are going to measure it up by the candle that created that impulse price change. Remember last week, we were able to analyze the markets that the market is going to get to this particular point in price, to this particular point in price, and there will be a rejection because of the previous high. So price was able to obey that particular structure, that particular distance to the buyers and serve as the support to the sellers. Now, the reason why we say that price was able to respect this particular zone is because the candle we are seeing here currently now was a bullish candle. Support to this particular point in price, but there was a price rejection based on the resistance we got here and based on the impulse price change here. So that led to the impulse price rejection of the sellers to the buyers. So, like we said, when price is approaching a resistance zone, price is tend to slow down in movement, in volatility. So there was an impulse price movement here, price injections. That is why we are seeing a shooting star candle, a bearish shooting star candle. So market will be, if market is able to reject at this particular point in price, market is tend to sell down to the particular point in price. If the resistance here and here does not hold price and move price upward, then it will break this particular point in price and head down to the next resistance zone, which is here, possibly gets to here and move up, bounce here and continue downward or push. So let's be sensitive to our reversal point. Let's map out our reversal point. We have reversal zone here. It's very sensitive, very sensitive, very sensitive, sensitive. Okay. Here we are possibly map out our reversal point. So once price is able, on this current price is able to resist at this particular point, it is heading to the next resistance zone to the sellers. It is going in a bullish direction, it will serve as support to the buyers. But if it doesn't break, then it is coming down to head to it will sell down to our next reversal point. So if the buyers was able to take over the market at this particular point in price currently, then the market it will move to a bullish. So if as a smart trader at this particular point in price, we wait for the market to give us a particular direction using our candlestick pattern, looking out for candlestick formations that will give us an insight what the market is going to play out. That is it for our technical analysis. So you go on a 4 hours time frame and look for possible, like I said, gold currently now is on a resistance zone. Looking at the market currently now, the market is selling, is rejecting. Like I said, where the market is currently now on a reversal point. So you can likely say our first indication that the market is on a reversal point. There is a tendency that the market will go bearish. But it will only go bearish to a resistance zone. We look for our next resistance zone. That's what the market is telling us. market is able to break that reversal point, the market is giving us a new high. So take note of that. That is it for gold, for gold, for gold. Now let's go to Euro USD. Euro USD. Euro USD. Wow, the market is actually filling up a liquidity void. The market is actually filling up a liquidity void. Now, there is what we call on the technical analysis, there's what we call fair to fair transaction. Fair to fair transaction. Like I was able to explain this particular market structure that it is a transaction being done by the buyers and the sellers having equal rights and equal profits in the market, having a common understanding. That is called the fair to fair transaction. Now, like I said, we should identify our trend. Let's identify our trend. This is, sorry about that. Let's identify our trend. This is a bearish trend. The market was on a serious consolidation on this particular point in price. So it's a very sensitive one. This like I said, when market is on a consolidation, the market moves in four directions, four principles: consolidation, expansion, then the market will either go bullish or bearish. Now, let me explain the fair to fair transaction being done by the sellers and the buyers. Now, if you look at this particular market movement, there was an impulse price change after the expansion. Now, what led to that particular decision both on the buyers and the sellers is that the buyers and the sellers were able to have a meeting at this particular point. Like when anywhere you find a consolidation, there is market order looking for where the market will go in the nearest future, sooner or later. So there was a market order bidding and asking price, both the buyers and the sellers. That was what led to the expansion that gives two candlestick bullish. Now, this is where the fair-to-fair transaction comes in. The buyers intentionally allowed the sellers to move the market to some certain extent, to some certain point in price. Remember, indecision was made here. That is why you were able to see a bullish doji candle. Due to that bullish doji candle, the sellers allowed the buyers to move the market to that particular point in price that the sellers were able to move the market. That is equal movement, equal profits. That is what is called a fair to fair transaction, both on the buyers and sellers. So we can quickly map out our sensitive points, which is our possible impulse price movement, which is our reversal point. Let's quickly map it out, which is here. Impulse price movement, like I said, mapping out your possible reversal point is not always useful at that particular point in price. It is giving you an insight where there will possibly be a reversal point, either bullish or bearish. Now, this particular range is a very sensitive zone. So, like I said, when market is approaching a resistance zone, the volatility of price tends to slow down. So the market is already slowing down. So if the market will break this resistance zone, the market is reading order, it is heading down to a lower high. So like I said, if market is on the downtrend, market is giving you a lower lows and lower highs. The previous low, the current low will be lower than the previous low. That is the lower high, and the previous high will be higher than the previous high. So that is it for a bearish direction. So if as a smart trader, like I said, the higher time frame gives you an overview of the market. Meanwhile, the lower time frame gives you the market in detail. So we go to 4 hours time frame on Euro US. Look at the market is actually moving at a bullish direction. It was able to respect this particular resistance point, which is serving as a support because we are seeing a bearish hammer candle that leads to these 3 bullish candlesticks. So the market is going on a bullish direction. That is to say, it is heading up to this particular point in price. It will head up to this particular point in price. So there will be a price rejection here if the market is going bullish. And if it's going better, remember this market is a bearish market. So if market is able to resist at this particular zone, it will get up to here and continue its downward movement. Or at this particular point in price might reject and it continue its downward movement. Because this is a bearish market. It will giving us a lower lows and lower highs. So that is it, and that is what we have for you for today. Don't forget this is brought by you by CJC Market. This is brought by you by CJC Market. Join us tomorrow 8:30 every day from Tuesdays to Friday on our daily analysis every day from Tuesdays to Friday. Then on Mondays at 11 o'clock a.m. is our weekly analysis. My name remains Jeff Tamadi, brought by you, reporting live from Port Harcourt branch CJC Market. So join us tomorrow, 8:30 tomorrow, and join and see what the market has for us for tomorrow on our daily analysis. Don't forget, you can join us on our physical class by 11 a.m. every day on our contact points or our office, be in Asaba, in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Abuja, in Owerri too, and in Bayelsa. So please contact any of our account officer. We invited you to this daily analysis.